Welcome to the Tri-City Herald Edit Board with 16th District candidates, Representative Skyler Rude and Challenger Jan Korn. I'm Cecilia Rexis, and I am the editorial writer for the Tri-City Herald. And we have with us today Mike Paoli. He is our community rep, and Matt Taylor. He is our retired editorial writer for the Herald. So I'm going to give you each 2 minutes for an opening remark, and then we'll get going after that. I will time you. If you start to go over, I'll wave my hand. I don't like to talk over people on a virtual call, but I'll just kind of give you a hand signal and you can wrap it up. And whatever thoughts on your mind, you can probably work it in during our conversation. So, so let me get that going. All right. So whenever you want, I let Skyler start. Whenever you start talking, I'll just press my button. Okay, Skyler?
Okay.
So go for it.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for having both of us here today. I'll just give you a little bit of background and kind of what my priorities have been. Fortunately, at this point, you have plenty of voting record to go off of as far as my policy positions. But I was first elected in 2018, so 2019 would have been my first session. Before that, I served as Senator Maureen Walsh's legislative assistant for 2 years. I think my my policy positions have been somewhat shaped by my experience with her. As you've probably noticed, I try to be very bipartisan. My views are fairly centrist or moderate, or sometimes I say independent. But I go to Olympia and I vote the way that I feel like I should be voting for a district. I serve on the Appropriations Committee, which is the operating budget committee, as well as Education, which handles the K-12 portion of education, and then the Healthcare Committee. Education has been a focus for me. I think that a high quality K-12 experience really lays a good foundation for any student to be successful at when they exit the K-12 system. So I focus on that. And there wasn't any one particular issue that brought me to the legislature. I just wanted to be effective and provide a quality representation for our district. And I feel like over the last 4 years, I've demonstrated that I can be effective for the district. My bill success rate is pretty high. Most of my bills are passed with unanimous support. The one that wasn't was actually carried by the Democrats on my behalf, and most of the Republicans voted against it, and the Democrats voted for it, which I appreciated. But moving forward, I think that my priorities have remained the same. I want to continue increasing the quality of education, keep a healthy reserve. Okay, thanks.
Oh, okay. You could have finished your thought. That's fine. We'll get to it. That's okay. We're not that hardcore, but that's okay.
I'll remember that in the future.
yeah, you can finish your sentence. So, all right, Jen, you too. Whenever you're ready, you just start talking and I'll press my timer.
Great. Well, thanks again for, as well as Skyler expressed, for having us and giving us this opportunity. It's so important to have these opportunities to talk through our values and vision for our community, even when we differ, especially when we differ. I've worked in the service industry and was a small business owner for over 2 decades, which is why I know what it means to work hard. I worked as a waitress and as a hairstylist. I've spent long days on my feet listening to people and taking care of them. Through grit and determination, I built a career in the cosmetology industry, serving as the manager of a JCPenney in-store salon for 10 years before opening my own business, Impress Salon, in Walla Walla over 20 years ago. Growing up in Walla Walla, my family instilled in me the importance of community involvement and service from a young age. I rarely say no when I'm asked to help with something I care about, which is in large part why I'm running for office. I've served on the executive boards of several local nonprofit organizations and volunteered with many others. I've been a member of Walla Walla Noon Rotary for 19 years and served on their board of directors for 7, with one of those years being a president. Rotary Club is part of a global nonprofit humanitarian organization which is not political or religious. There are many passionate and strong differences of opinion, and yet in the end, we find solutions to the challenges and issues facing our communities. It is that experience that makes me know I can work with everyone in Olympia. I'm running for office because I'm concerned about the deterioration of our ability to govern together. Our democracy is in jeopardy. You know, I'm old enough to remember a time when our elected officials might have disagreed on policy, but they could still come together for the greater good. There are many issues that I care about, most of which are related to family, affordable housing, wages, daycare. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. So I'll start off. So after redistricting, the 16th district changed quite a bit, right? I mean, it still includes Walla Walla County, but I think it includes much more of Benton County than it did in the past, and a tiny bit of Franklin County. So I guess I'll just start with you, Jan. So I know you've been very, very, very involved in Walla Walla. I was just wondering, you know, what do you know about the Tri-Cities, and what are you doing to connect with the rest of your legislative district that's not in Walla Walla County? So,
well, one way that I have been aware and connected somewhat is through District 5080 of Rotary does take in all of Tri-Cities. So I have a lot of friends and connections and businesses over there, as well as family over the years. But to be honest, that's an area that I'm really working to reach out.
okay. And then Skyler, you know, obviously you're aware of Tri-City issues, but with the redistricting, do you think there needs to be a different emphasis, maybe more emphasis, because there's so many more people that are in the district? Maybe you can just speak to that too, and how different the district looks.
Yeah, before redistricting, half of the population was in Walla Walla County. The legislative district was 4 counties: Columbia, Franklin, Walla Walla, and Benton. Now we have literally, Jan probably saw these numbers, 11 voters out of Franklin County. So we're basically Benton and Walla Walla. And now Benton is more than half of the voters. So it is difficult to get over to Prosser, for example, is an hour and 15 minutes for me. It is difficult to get over there for one meeting. So I think you just kind of have to strategize, like book your meetings over there on one day. Or now everybody's more familiar with technology, and so jumping on a Zoom call is easier, and I think makes us more accessible to the voters around the district. I should say the residents, because we're here to serve all the residents, whether they're voting or not.
Oh, sure.
So I think that's been a positive change. But I meet with Benton County commissioners and staff every year. And I know that invitation would extend to Jan if she were held this position. That's just been a tradition. But I think there's room for improving the relationship with the cities over there. I haven't met, I met the mayor of Prosser, but we haven't met with the whole city council more than I think one time this last year. And Bill Jenkins was from there in the past. And so at that point, it's kind of like, Bill can handle this and I'll focus over here.
Right.
And now we definitely, all of our legislators, regardless of how this election turns out, will be from Walla Walla. We need to put some emphasis on outreach there.
So, so Jan, I guess, what do you think sets you apart from Skyler? Mostly, why should voters choose you over an incumbent that has had such success, I guess? So,
well, obviously, one of the challenges that all three of our representative and our state senator are all from one party, which is the minority party. And quite often in their town halls and newsletters, they share their frustration that they really struggle to get anything done because they are in the minority and it's hard to get an audience. And I really feel like there's a tremendous opportunity for us to send someone who would actually be able to work with the majority caucus and still work together with everyone. There's a lot of things that are missed in this area because we're not talking, we're not at the table, we're not having the opportunity to get federal funds and state funds to this area because it's just, they're really not looking at us that closely. And I will say that the Democratic Party has been really active in working on that relationship with our partners on the West Side to get more support and attention. And I just feel when we keep sending the same party over there that is in the majority here, but the minority there, it's not really helping our district.
Okay, and then I think this will be a good way for me to ask more about that bill, Skyler, that you said the Democrats carried for you, but the Republicans didn't vote for. What bill was that? What's the story there?
I've been working on this one for a long time. It improves access to the Death with Dignity Act that voters approved about 13 years ago. And that's just something that I feel strongly about. And even though the vast majority of Republican legislators didn't support it, looking back at the initiative results, Walla Walla County voted for it, Columbia County voted for it. Most of the Republican county populations were voting for it at the time. And I think public opinion would only shift favorably toward access to the Death with Dignity law. So I've been working for 3 years now on a bill to make sure that patients who do qualify because they're terminally ill, expected to pass within 6 months, according to their physicians, can access the prescriptions in a reasonable time frame and access providers and that kind of thing. So all my co-sponsors on that bill were Democrats. And then we had 4 House Republicans vote for it. But I do feel like my relationship with Democrats is very good. Last year, 3 of my 4 bills that I sponsored passed. And I think that's a really good success rate. So I don't feel like the minority party status has negatively impacted my ability to work for the district. And when House Democrats come to the Walla Walla area, they will reach out and we'll have dinner or we'll have drinks. And there are certainly relationships there. Last session, I was in Olympia the whole time, and I invited freshman Democrats over to the house for dinner to get to know them with a group of Republicans. And the virtual session has made that more of a challenge, but I definitely haven't forgot about that goal, which is to build relationships and humanize the other side, because I think there's a lot of partisanship and social media contributes to that, and the virtual session contributes to that. But I guess I have a different perspective than Jan does on that.
Well, I've read your newsletters and heard your town halls, so that's where I got that. Sorry. If I could, Cecilia, I'd like to go back to the other big thing that I feel like qualifies me is the fact that I have been a business owner and manager of a major corporation department and all of my nonprofit work my entire adult life. So I feel like there's a lot of experiences that I have that I bring to the table that and the fact that I'm more than a politician.
Okay, great. I see Matt Taylor had a question. Matt, you want to?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to throw Bill Grant's name out there for this part of the conversation. Bill Grant was who we knew very well. Bill Grant was a Democrat. He's passed on now. He used to bring the Republicans over in his car to editorial board meetings. He never lost an election. He was elected over and over and over again, and got along with everybody. And I just thought I'd mention that.
Can I?
He's an icon here for sure.
Can I add a 10-second tag on that?
Sure.
So I think it's safe to say that Bill Grant's name alone has served our district well, far past when he was out of the legislature, when he passed away, especially in water issues that I worked on. His name came up repeatedly and in a positive way from Democrats who served with him. So I just concur with everything you said.
Yeah.
So, well, Mike, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I'd like both candidates, if you will, to discuss what's kind of been a hot issue out there with regard to police reform, and whether that pendulum's gone too far or not far enough. I'd like to start with Skyler, please.
Okay. Yeah. To answer the last part of the question, I think it has gone too far. And I think the timeline between when legislators started developing bills in response to law enforcement interactions that happened in other states to the time that those bills were passing off the floor of the House was very short. And there is need for reform, but to rush something that is as complex as law enforcement reform through the legislative process that quickly led to flaws. And there were significant flaws that I think endangered the lives of people across the state. So there have been some corrections. I think there's one example that comes to mind, and this was inadvertent on the part of the sponsors of one of those bills, was they accidentally banned the use of non-lethal projectiles, foam projectiles and beanbags. That was included in their bill that was banning 50 caliber weapons. And so that was just a mistake that happened. And because of the nature of the legislative process, we had to wait until the next legislative session. I mean, there could have been a special session called, but they chose to wait until the next legislative session. And during that whole time, that wasn't a non-lethal alternative that law enforcement could use. I think the pursuit bill also has caused problems. I've met with our local law enforcement, and when criminals or suspects know that they can get away or even have a perception that they can flee, it creates a safety issue for the community. So those are some that stick out in my mind. And I think there was an opportunity for more collaboration on those issues. I think law enforcement organizations were kind of being careful not to step on anybody's toes. And I wish they'd been a little bit more vocal in their opposition during the legislative process than they were. I think that could have been helpful. But yeah, I guess the short answer to your question is I think it went too far. We need to do a little bit more rollback, but some of the improvements were good.
Thank you. Jen?
Well, I agree that there were some things that came out of the crisis that we're in, of kind of rogue law enforcement, and they're a vast minority. We understand that, but when there's one maybe overly aggressive law enforcement officer in an organization, it's one too many. And we've seen over and over that they're allowed to stay there, and everybody just kind of continues to cover for them. And that's where everything came to a horrifying head a few years ago. And I know there was even the situation up in Seattle with Chaz and the city police there, that there was quite a conflict with the citizens and the police department because of overaggression. And then it just created this big cycle. And that's the way it is around the country. And my opinion of that is that so much of our law enforcement are former military. It's a perfect segue into a career in law enforcement from the military. And what happens is, I can't even imagine how you take a person who is trained to be in a war situation and kill or be killed, and then somehow de-escalate that and make it be okay to work with citizens and everyday people. I'm not even a huge fan of the pursuit thing. I think there must be some middle ground on that, because it's just as dangerous for there to be multiple cars running through neighborhoods chasing a suspect down. So I just think there's a lot of there is a lot of emotion involved in this, because we've seen a lot of tragedy, and I would like to see us be able to. I rode around with Cody Main here, Skyler. I know you know him. He's a paramedic, and I rode with him. They have this program where they just kind of get to know the mentally ill in town and homeless. And I rode around with him, and it reminded me of a beat cop, where they're not there to, punish and pursue as much as just get to know and know their neighbors and know what's going on. And I just think there are a lot of flaws in that area.
Would you specifically address your thoughts on the pursuit piece of the legislation that prevents officers from pursuing?
Well, I'll be honest, I don't know how far that goes, but it's almost like there are incidents where they end up pursuing, where it becomes a danger to everyday citizens as well, that get caught in the middle, or innocent bystanders. So that's my only concern. Is public safety.
If you were to be elected, would this be an area that you would call to be redressed, or would you have higher priorities on your mind?
I would call anything that seems important to be addressed. I'm on a huge learning curve here, as Skyler well knows. He grew up in the legislature with Maureen and now on his own, and so I'm not nearly as knowledgeable about details, but I know how to surround myself with people who are. And so I would definitely want to learn more about it to figure out what the best course of action would be.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Skyler, you wanted to say something, I think?
Well, I'll try to be brief. I've seen repeatedly kind of this cycle where the legislature tries to address a real problem, and that's an example of it, trying to address a real problem. But then the effect of that solution ends up exacerbating the problem. And so what's happening right now with that law is that if a person is creating a public safety issue with their hazardous driving while they're fleeing, that's when the police can't follow them. So it's incentivizing people to create the public safety issues so they can flee, which is not what we want to do.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, is the part that we need to correct.
Okay, so I've got another issue. Something that troubled a lot of people in the Tri-Cities were during the height of COVID, Governor Inslee's emergency powers. And the legislature never was able to get together to reform that. I'm wondering, though, now that the emergency orders are going to end at the end of October, things have settled down. Skyler, do you think that the legislature will take that on and try to rein in those that emergency clause that allows the governor to do what he did? I just wonder what you think.
I mean, only can speculate, of course, but I suspect not. Mm-hmm. I don't think that the will exists to do that. I didn't get the perception from really more than a couple members of the majority that there was a problem with the emergency powers. But I'm going to forward you an email that I sent to all the House Democrats. I didn't even include any Republicans. I just sent it to them expressing my position, because it's like, I just have to say my piece with my concerns. And two of them, three of them wrote back. One to talk about it, the other two expressing that they agreed that the emergency powers went too far. But we're in a pretty deep minority in the House. It's 57-41. And so there were many bills that passed with total Republican opposition and a handful of Democratic opposition, and the bills were still passing through because the majority is so large. And so that's one where I just don't think that enough of the majority party members are interested in a reform that it's going to happen. And I think if the pressure was highest during the emergency declaration, I think that pressure has waned, And so I don't see it changing.
Okay. Jen, did you have any thoughts on that? How COVID was handled and
Well, I think in the beginning it definitely was, and I'll share a personal story from, we had to shut down my business March 17th or 16th, and then we reopened June 1st, and it was at that time we were still learning about how it was spread, what it was, and with having such close contact and touching clients, it was very unnerving for us. It was not, it truly took the joy out of doing hair and having fun with your clients, because it became very serious. And so I appreciated all the protocols and precautions and stuff, because I felt like at that point I had the ability to potentially harm someone. And so in the beginning, I think it was warranted. And then as time went on and we figured out what was kind of more about the virus, that we could have, it seemed like it went on too long. I do have a question about the governor's emergency powers. How often has he used the executive powers beyond COVID? Skyler?
Well, there are emergency declarations oftentimes around like wildfires, for example, but not statewide. Like you can't go play. I mean, it's just extreme use. So
yeah,
and I agree with you. Early on, I supported even shutting down businesses early on before there was much information, and I also agree with you that it went on too long.
Okay, Matt, did you have a question?
No, I did not, but I did want to say to Jan that she has expressed an opinion and she is entitled to her opinion. I think I personally, I give credit to the people who have served. I had two brothers who served in the military. Neither one of them became a policeman, and I realize that's not a fact. That's just a report from me. But because of them, I've had a fair amount of exposure to people who were in the military. And a member of our board here, Jack Briggs, is one of them, although I met him under different circumstances. I was in the military. Not the real kind of military where I was seeing bodies as you were suggesting. I find them to be more human than I think you do, and I just felt obliged to tell you that.
Well, Matt, I appreciate you sharing that, and I certainly understand and respect that point. I guess it came out as more of a blanket statement, and that's not the way I intended. I come from, my family is military background as well. I just think there are some combinations of specific situations where people have been exposed to so much trauma, in the military, that maybe law enforcement isn't the right fit for them. And thank you for pointing that out.
I wanted to ask about all the clean energy legislation that's been pushed through. Skyler, what's your take on that? Do you have any concerns about any of that? I know in our area, people are a little bit worried about wind turbines taking over our vistas. We're all for clean energy. There was concern that, if you want to speak to the snake dams, that, hydropower is really great clean energy, but folks were thinking, let's breach the dam, save the salmon, and put solar panels and wind turbines all around us. So anyway, there's all these thoughts in the community. I was just wondering what your take is on all that.
Yeah, that's a broad topic. So Representative Clicker had a bill that I think got amended into a different bill that, if I recall correctly, would have allowed more local decision making on the permitting for the windmills, and I support that. I'm not looking. I do see the windmills from here, but they're not in my backyard, and I feel like those decisions should be more local. And so I support giving more local control in that decision making. As you would suspect, I don't support removing the dams. I do care immensely for the fish, and I've worked really hard to build a relationship with my nearest tribe, which is the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, and I think it's really important that we respect those treaty rights. And they're kind of like the number one environmentalists. Like, I look at them as like historic managers of the local environment. And so I give great weight to their perspective, their treaty rights, and how they view nature. It's been interesting to learn about. As far as just general environmental issues, and I think the ones that we've seen in the legislature the most have been related to air, and some around like styrofoam and recycling materials. And I've voted for and sponsored some bills related to that. I think with air, though, that seems to be more of a national, like federal, even according to the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution. It's crossing state lines. Water does that too. My biggest concern is that we go too far. We hurt the business environment, drive up cost of living, which anytime the cost of living increases, it generally hurts the lower income populations disproportionately. And so that's the risk involved. We can go too far. And so I think climate change is real. Like, there are real dangers. But really Congress should be tackling that. And if we try to do it at this really tiny little spot on the planet, we're not going to really impact the climate in any measurable way. So I just think we have to be careful. And I've told Democrats, if you wanted to do some kind of a joint memorial to Congress, it's just like a message to Congress, basically, asking for some action on climate, I'd be interested in doing something like that, because I feel like that's the appropriate place for those conversations to be happening.
What about you, Jan? What's your stance on the environment and some of the legislation, some of the goals that we've seen?
Well, they're
you know,
definitely lofty, and I agree with a lot of what Skyler said about the dams and the windmills and solar. They all have their benefits and their potential risks. There's so much that we don't know yet about long-term, as far as the parts of solar panels, the things that, you know, what's going to happen with waste from that. But we have to, we keep trying to kick the can down the road. We have to, at some point in time, decide that it's dire and we need to do something. And so I think that's why the pendulum swings really far extreme and back and forth. We need to do something. And we keep trying to pass the buck or put it off. And I just feel like something has to be done, or we can just keep twiddling our thumbs and eventually it won't be an issue because we'll have missed our opportunity.
One quick comment that is definitely, I realize, outside the scope of this position, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for the United States to have global influence on the environment in our trade policies. And so that's not something that we can control at this level, but it is truly a global issue. It's a climate that's more than our state, and that's where it should be happening.
okay. Mike, you had a question?
Did you say Matt?
Nobody?
I said Mike.
Oh,
Mike.
okay.
Yeah, Matt. Yeah, I'd like to know where should you, either one of you, go back to the legislature, or for the first time, where are you going to weigh in on the importance of energy investment in your district and the neighboring districts, and be specific in terms of what kind of energy investments do you think we should be pushing in Olympia?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead, Skyler.
Okay.
Could you jump in?
One that I'm interested in is harvesting. It's called biogas. It's just methane emissions, basically, which is, I guess, ties into the environmental conversation. But there may be opportunity. I'm pretty sure there is opportunity for us to harvest methane emissions from organic decomposition, manure from a dairy manure, for example, or even landfills. If we could harvest that methane emission, it could be injected into our natural gas pipeline. That brings another concern. We've seen a lot of movement toward banning natural gas. If we do that, then this idea doesn't become practical because there's no beneficial use for the methane. I had the opportunity to go to Denmark on an energy kind of energy environmental trip and saw that they're doing this. They have these digesters, and farmers will come drop off the manure, and they accelerate the decomposition, harvest the methane, and then send them back which has basically become dirt. But organic waste from fruits and vegetables is also used for that. Human sewage waste could also be used, but it's just an idea that I've thought might help in having that conversation about the value of natural gas, while minimizing methane emissions, which are much more harmful than CO2. So I think natural gas is a really important energy source, especially in manufacturing. And then nuclear power is specific to our region as well. I serve on, it's a long name, it's called the National Conference of State Legislatures, and it's the organization nuclear legislative working group, I think. So Matt Banky and Sharon Brown and I are the three members from Washington State that serve on that work group, to basically learn about everything nuclear, whether it's energy production, uranium enrichment, medical waste, weapons waste. And so there's a place there for disposal of Hanford waste, but also maintaining a safe supply, considering the relationship with Russia and their production of uranium, protecting that supply for nuclear energy, which is, by the way, emission free.
Okay, Jan.
Well, I definitely support hydropower. It's clean. It's there. We have a lot of longevity there, and nuclear. That methane idea is fascinating. I just think there's a lot of potential with innovation and technology to explore what our options are. And so, yeah, we have the infrastructure already for nuclear and hydro. So I see no reason to undo that.
So, Skyler, I guess one of the things we like to do sometimes on our edit boards is ask the candidates, what question did we not ask that you wished we had asked? So is there something you would have liked to have brought up that we didn't bring up?
Well, the first part of your question, am I surprised which question you didn't bring up? Yes. Is it one that I wish you had asked? I'm not sure about that. Which is the issue that I always said up until now, it's a federal issue. I'm not making laws on it. Roe v. Wade being overturned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to comment on that, we can definitely do that.
Sure, go for it.
Okay. I mean, it's probably my best interest not to, but do I have like 2 minutes for that one?
Just talk. We're not timing anything right now.
So that is one that I think is really important to separate truth from fiction. And especially in an election year, it becomes hyper politicized. And I hate when that happens with any issue. And this one is especially, maybe emotional is the right word. Maybe there's a better word for it. But I think there's a policy conversation, and then there's a legal constitutional conversation. They are totally separate. Kind of like the Death with Dignity Act. Is that a constitutional right? No. Is it the right policy choice? Absolutely, in my opinion. We need to make sure it's accessible. And so since I'm a policymaker, not a judge, I think that I don't plan on running any bills on that topic. I think it would be it wouldn't be the best use of legislative time for us to pursue changes on an issue that are going to go to the governor. Well, in this case, wouldn't go anywhere. If they went anywhere, they would land on the governor's desk and be vetoed. I think he has been very clear on that issue where he stands, but also that the law on that policy area has been set not by the legislature primarily, but by the people. So, I mean, we have to acknowledge that we live in a democratic system, which we all value, and that issue has been decided by the people. So I don't intend on going there, but I know that because it's such a hot topic right now, it comes up.
Jen, do you have any thoughts on?
Not really understanding why at this particular time in history it was necessary to roll that back. But I'm certainly happy to live in one of the states that is pretty safe for now, for women to take care of their own health care. I am concerned that there are 27 pretty strongly conservative states that are really extreme in their interpretation of that overturning. And so it's eliminating the access for women to make choices about their own health care. And yes, I feel comfortable living in Washington state now, but we do live in the United States of America. And it seems like we go back and forth between what should be decided on a state level and what should be decided on a federal level. So I don't feel completely secure.
Okay, Jen, I'll ask you the same question I asked Skyler. Is there a question you wished we had asked you? There's a topic you would have liked to discuss that we didn't bring up yet?
Well, just obviously the Roe v. Wade, and I'm glad that it was brought up. But the other thing is, I truly am concerned about the division in our country and in our state. I mean, we're not exempt from the politicization of things, and I would like to be able to have more dialogue and solve problems of our citizens every day, rather than, we shouldn't, there's so many social issues that need to be addressed. And coming from the nonprofit sector, as far as volunteering, a lot can be done, but it needs to partner with government too. We need to just take care of our people. And COVID really showed us where the big gaps are with people. And even now, businesses aren't open as much as they used to be before COVID, because they just can't staff it. And it's become a real issue and hardship for people to go to work. And so I think we can do better.
Okay, great. Well, it's 4:15 and Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah, Cecilia,
Go
Jen,
ahead.
you brought up there's so many issues that need to be addressed, and I think this is something that really hasn't come out between the two of you, Jen and Skyler. I'd like to know a little less about your platform and a little more about your opponent's platform that you disagree with.
I can start that one if that works. I haven't really. I've made an effort every time that I run for office to focus on what I bring to the table, and I honestly haven't. I mean, obviously we disagree on some issues, but I haven't gotten deep into her platform, and I haven't seen anything that I thought. I knew we disagreed on Roe v. Wade. Fundamentally, if we were policymakers, our votes would be different. But I'm just kind of focused on my own, what I'm doing. So I don't know. Maybe I don't have an answer to that one.
Fair enough. Jen?
Well, I would say that honestly, and this is kind of an interesting, the timeline of how this happened, but just the dialogue nationally, and it does spill over into into every community. You can't help but that it would. And Skyler and I exchanged a few emails, and where I am truly just concerned about whether or not democracy is going to survive. It seems we definitely don't see things that way. Skyler was not at all concerned about the state of the country itself, and Washington is part of the country, so that's my concern.
How would that translate into how you might do things differently in Olympia than Skyler would?
Well, I guess what I feel is that if I could just add one more voice at the table anywhere, that we're in a fragile situation. And when I think if you can, for every person who wants to, who doesn't see an issue or kind of just dismisses it, I guess I feel like I could just be a person who could, I'm taking it seriously and just working together to solidify.
Thank you.
Is it okay if I add a little bit to that?
Sure.
I'm assuming it's okay to share a little bit, Jan, about our email
Sure.
content. We just mentioned the January 6th attack at the Capitol, and
That wasn't the catalyst.
I wouldn't say that's a catalyst, right?
No, I reached out to all of you. The catalyst was just continuing the national dialogue about last year's election and who's really the president. And it was something after, it was where McCarthy that was the catalyst to where he was saying he didn't say any of those things, but it was all on audio and video. And it just, the blatant dishonesty and denying, that was why I sent you the email.
Yeah, I am struggling to see the connection to me, but I think what happened was horrific. Access to democracy is fundamental to our system. I co-sponsored a bill to make postage free on our ballots, and that passed into law. I think voting should be barrier free. I don't feel like there is a threat to the system falling apart. I think what the rioting that happened probably would be the closest thing to that. We've had horrific events happen in the United States history many times. But what I'm most concerned about is the partisanship and how democracy still works, but it just becomes polarized, less effective, more extreme. Sometimes politics attracts the extreme on the ends and leaves the people in the middle that are center kind of out of the conversation. And I think the more
do you have any thoughts on why we practically celebrate a 45 or 50% turnout of voters when it is so easy here in the state? That's something that really concerns me, that people just aren't engaged.
I haven't ever celebrated it. I think voter turnout should be, it's never going to be 100%, but yeah, the numbers are always disappointing. And Walla Walla County and Benton County are not in the highest percentage of counties that turn out.
And I wasn't implying that you celebrated. I was like saying in the news reports, it'll be like, wow, we had 45%.
Yeah, I agree. It's disappointing. Columbia County always has a much higher participation rate, but I think it's still something like 70%. So I don't know. There might be some kind of a connection to, I think a lot is connected to our K-12 system and how our students raised and execute in the system and how much value they place on civics. I think that's an area where we could improve. But I don't know. It's hard to motivate people. Obviously you and I feel passionately about politics and government operating, the way we feel it should. And I don't know how you get people interested in participating.
I wouldn't say I'm passionate about politics.
Okay.
I am passionate about people.
Okay.
And this is the system we have. So
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I just want to recap. So this email exchange, you're very worried about democracy is very fragile, you think, Jan, and you're very concerned about it. And Skylar, you are concerned, but you still believe that democracy is intact, even though there's polarization and extremists are probably, you know, the ones in the news, right? So am I getting that? Is that fair? Is my perception fair? Do you want to do? Okay.
I think the system is intact.
Oh, you think the system is intact? Okay.
It's the partisanship that is really damaging and is getting worse.
Right. The
way we're using the system.
Okay. So what do you think about our election integrity? Is there anything that needs to happen to convince people that, you know, that our elections do work and that they don't have to be so fearful about that? Or I don't know. There's still a lot of people who think Trump won the election. Is that I take it neither of you agree with that? so
I do not agree with that.
Yeah.
No question in my mind that Joe Biden is the president of the United States. I think a lot of people don't understand even how our election system for president works and the whole dynamics of the electoral college and how the electors are selected. And that makes a difference in understanding like that whole process. And that comes back to education as well. So I think ultimately government's education system is failing our students in the area of civics.
Okay. Did you have anything to add, Jan, or?
No, thank you.
Okay. All righty. Matt, Mike, are there any other questions from either of you?
Nothing to
Nothing. Okay, this was great. I thought this was a really good discussion. Thank you so much. And we're a little bit over from what I had told you, but I hope that's okay. So I like to let people talk if they are on a roll. So we had Skylar start the opening. I'm going to let Jan start with the closing then. So.
Well, I think we covered a lot of things. So basically the other things I wanted to talk about was, and we touched on it, the housing and availability, the dream of home ownership, once a bedrock of the American dream, is slipping farther out of reach. Many worry about next month's rent, and if one thing goes wrong, car repairs, an unexpected trip to the doctor, they are left scrambling to keep a roof over their heads. And I'm running because families deserve access to affordable childcare. We need health care that is in the reach of everyone. I'm a firm believer that healthy people make healthy communities. We need to get serious about the sustainability to protect our planet's future and the people, farms, and places that make our communities special. I am not a politician. What I am is someone who cares about the future of our communities. I will model leadership that is grounded in a spirit of service, compassion, and generosity. An important thing I learned while operating a small business was how to listen to my staff and clients. I have firsthand experience with vendor relations and government regulations. Your vote for me is a vote for leadership that prioritizes listening to you and your family. We'll work together to create solutions that improve the lives of Eastern Washington communities. And thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, go. Whenever you're ready,
Okay.
Sarah.
Just since we have a little bit more time, just a couple more issues that didn't come up. Is drug abuse and mental health. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Blake decision. That should also be a priority for the legislature. There was a diversion program set up, but no enforcement, follow through, or services provided. So that should be a priority for the legislature as well. And I agree with Jan on the childcare issue. I'm a believer in early learning and the investment that is, and making sure that a student is successful when they enter kindergarten. I was one of the few Republicans that voted for the Fair Start for Kids Act, which put $400 million per biennium into childcare. And I kind of, on the social services for young people, I feel like there is a state interest in making sure that kids are taken care of as they're growing up and they enter adulthood where they can be on their own and be successful. So that's kind of general philosophy in the legislature. I'll continue working in a bipartisan manner as much as I can, considering our two-party system the way it is. But I'm proud of my record so far. I have a couple votes that I regret, but not more than a couple out of over 1,000. So I think the record's there. And I told myself when I first ran for office that after I have an established voting record, that should speak for itself. So I hope it does.
Great, thank you. Well, this was a joy. Thank you so much for taking the time with us today. We really appreciate it. Good luck to you both.